The days following our presidential election have been conflicted and confused and anxious. Our nation is pretty much evenly divided along many lines: political, cultural, racial, educational, and so on. It's a moment of painful pause for our nation as a community. The New Yorker magazine had a cartoon this week showing people sitting in an airplane, and a voice over the plane's loudspeaker was saying, "If you look out the left side windows, you can see the smoldering remains of our civilization." What a negative view of our nation and its life. Even though we are in a scary moment, I don't believe our nation is falling apart. So what holds us together as a national community? My office is in a building next door to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. When I walk out of my building, I stand looking up at a building that can only be described as massive. The main body of the cathedral is 2 football fields long, and the ceiling is 124 feet high. All the other measurements are just as staggering. The building must weigh millions of tons of stone and wood and concrete and metal and glass. Soaring above are massive columns and arches that seemingly float in space, gigantic buttresses holding up the roof and the walls. The cathedral has been standing for more than a century. I have often wondered what exactly holds it up. It seems to me that 3 things hold the building up: gravity and tension and friction. Spiritually, the cathedral stands because of the gravity of its faith in and witness to Jesus Christ and the spread of Jesus's kingdom. Physically, the cathedral stands because of the push of its weight downward toward the solid bedrock foundation on which it rests. The thrust and counterthrust of stone against stone. The cathedral holds together by the friction of stone resting on stone. In some ways, this triad of gravity and tension and friction describes in a graphic way what holds us together as a national community. And what exactly is that? The United States has never been a particularly quiet or even peaceful nation. We've rebelled against legitimate authority in the Revolutionary War. We've endured a civil war, seen our way through violent disagreements and violence over politics and labor rights and the threat of communism, the civil rights movement, the turbulence of the 1960s, Watergate, Vietnam. And yet for all of that, and the misjudgments that our government has made, our experiment in democratic government has persisted, and it's weathered the storms, and we've changed. As a nation, we've made some terrible mistakes around race and equity, gender, LGBTQ rights, and immigration, mistakes around access to medical care and education for all, voting rights, the environment, the First People. Over the short term, we may not look so good, given the oppression and the violence involved in these national errors. However, over the long view, our national community has held together, and we have grown and changed through our struggle. We have grown and changed in our attitudes and in our behavior. And we have grown in how we understand and live our values of liberty and justice and equal rights for all, and how they're lived out in our laws and in our daily lives. While we can rejoice in the progress we've made as a nation, we still have a long way to go. I have faith in our ongoing national experiment in democratic government. I trust the wisdom of the American people over the long term and our capacity to grow and to change. Esther Perel, an author dedicated to healing relationships, reflected on this moment in our nation's life when she said, "We have a screaming match right now, but we have a foundation underneath. Let us continue to remain true to that foundation of democracy and our ideals of liberty and justice and equality. And let us resolve to continue to build on that foundation. But no human community or ideology or religious or political party can legitimately claim to know the whole truth. That is putting oneself in the place of God, and that's idolatry. For anyone from presidents to paupers or any political party or nation or church that claims that only they have all the answers is on the sure path to ruin and failure. The service of self, individual or national or religious self, and selfish ends is truly a dead end. If we allow it, it's the rough and tumble of community life that forms and shapes who we are and what we are, and that moves us ahead. Without the tensions and the rough and tumble of communal life, communities stagnate and die. But we do have glimpses of what the ultimate truth is, a pathway through these days for individuals, for churches, and for nations. The rough and tumble of life lived in community and community struggles is a mark of the dynamism of God's action in this world. It is clear that the moral arc of the universe is bent toward mercy, justice, serving neighbor, dignity, equality, and community. The biblical book, the Revelation of John, describes a vision of the heavenly community. And if you read the 14th chapter of John, you will see that the heavenly community in all its fullness and glory is a very noisy and tumultuous place indeed. Standing up and witnessing for justice and inclusion and equity is a glimpse of our patron saint's heavenly vision. John's vision of the heavenly city includes actively respecting the dignity of every person and serving our neighbor's need. John's vision of the heavenly city includes caring for the poor, the weak, and those who have no helper, ensuring that no one goes hungry or without medical care or education. All of these are glimpses into the future that God has in store for this nation and the world. The rough and tumble of community life and struggles is a mark of the dynamism of God's action in this world, uncomfortable as those moments may be. It is clear that the moral arc of the universe is bent toward mercy and justice, serving neighbor, dignity, equality, and community, and it is our mission to witness and live and work toward that end. By renewing our cathedral's dedication to John's vision of the heavenly kingdom and our nation's values as expressed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, we must take another step now along the long journey toward what God intends for this nation and world. By dedicating ourselves as a cathedral community to the pathways towards God's fulfilled and beloved community, and at the same time, by committing ourselves to living in the lively and sometimes fractious community of church and nation, we can have confidence that we are on the road that leads toward the heavenly kingdom and to a renewed national community.